Hi, it's Mike again, and thanks for joining me on this video. And we are going to be looking at HTML forms. The objectives are to recognize form syntax, understand the different input types, and understand the importance of labels. But first, let's have a look at real-world examples. On the left, we've got Amazon. Their sign-in feature. First, they want an email or indeed a phone number for mobile accounts. Underneath is a box. This is an input box in HTML terms, and because it's either email or a phone number, it's probably a input equals text. And underneath the sort of text input, there's a button saying continue, and we can tell it's a form just because there's a button saying continue. The center example, existing customers sign in. Effectively, on this one, they want an email address or a customer number. Again, this would be an input equals text input field. Then there's a password, which would be a different password field. We can see that in our code in a moment. And also, guess what? There's a big sign in button. On the right-hand side, this one's from a bank. So the first text input field they want is surname or last name. And underneath, effectively, the bank gives you a choice of how you would like to log in. And you've got three options. Each one is known as a radio button, and you can tell that because it's circular. Okay, so you can either go membership number, card number, or account number. So effectively, you can have one, but not the others. So you choose one, and then you type into the text field the number that you are using. A form, well, funnily enough, it's got an opening tag and a closing tag. Straightforward, it's called form. We won't be coding the action bit, but I just need to show you action equals inverted commas, and in effect, we would type in some information here for it to connect to our server. And it would have a method, either get or post as well, but that's not the point of this video. This is just the HTML bit. Okay, so forms interacts with the website server side and the databases on the server side, etc. We won't be covering that. This is just how to create forms in HTML. So there's a bunch of inputs. Let's have a look at each one by one. First one is the text input. So you saw earlier, type in your username, type in your first name, etc. So on the left-hand side, I've got a little image saying first name, last name, and this is input type equals text. And it's looking for you to put text in, either letters or numbers. However, the next one just wants numbers. Okay, so input type equals number, and you'll see from the screenshot, I've put a little blue box around. A number box provides a uppy downy button, so the numbers count up or down for the user rather than typing in the number. On each form that we've just seen, the real world examples, each required a password. Well, this is input type equals password, straightforward as that. What does that do to the input field? Well, it hides the numbers and letters that you're typing in as your password, so that if there's anybody looking over your shoulder, they can't know what your password is. Please note that all these input types don't have a closing tag. Okay, do not have a closing tag, and neither do these. These are input types as well. The first one is called radio button, and you can see the top image. Effectively, you've got one of three choices. I just put choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. But with a radio button, the user can only select one. It can't select any more than one. Whereas with a checkbox, and you can see the little squares here instead of circles, squares are checkbox, or checkboxes are squares. Effectively, you can choose any one of the checkboxes. Ta-da! Now you'll remember back to that banking login form. It requested one method of logging in, so that was using the radio facility. Okay, right. The third on the list is input type equals date. And this is quite cool, where we don't have to create a calendar or anything, because the user just clicks on the date input and a little calendar appears and they can choose the date from there. Okay, second to last is input type equals file, and effectively the browser says, well, hey, they want a choose file button and an upload button, and we don't have to do that. All we have to do is put input type file, and then input type equals submit. Well, funnily enough, the system or the browser creates a little button, but we have to provide the text saying submit button, and so on. So I think it's about time to code, but however, let's just talk about labels first. Now, what does a label do? Well, a label provides the information for the user to realize what they need to submit. So in this instance, choose your membership, basic, standard, or premium. Well, the label is the choose your membership. Okay, in the next concept, its first name is the label. So we can type in our first name, John, Stuart, Susan, and so on. Okay. Now, there's a couple of concepts here that we haven't come across before. The label needs a for equals inverted commas, and the input type needs an ID or an identifier, an ID. And you can see in the bottom instance here, we've got an ID of first name. Okay, so what? Well, the label for first name points to the input with an ID of first name. I'll just say that again. The label with for equals first name points to the input with an ID of first name. And we'll have a look at this in a minute when we do some coding. There's another bit of code here. Name equals, I've put first name in this instance. So what? Well, if we don't put name, then when we hit submit, the form will not sort of speak to the database, which would have maybe a column called first name. Okay, so name equals connects or matches to the database data, whereas the for effectively connects or links to the input with an ID. So we'll have a play with that in a minute. Right, let's crack on with some coding. Okay, as usual, on the left-hand side, I've got my text editor, on the right, the browser. So the first thing I'm going to do is declare the form. And don't forget, we needed this other statement called action. We're not going to do action in this video because that's not HTML. So what I'm going to do is then close the form off. And the first thing that companies really want the first thing for you to do is input type is text, and really they want your first name or last name or a combination of both. So all I'm going to do there is input text. I'm going to hit save, come over to the browser and refresh, and just under the heading here we can see here that there's an input field. Okay, and I can type in numbers and letters. However, on our web page it's not specific on what they want us to type in. So what we can do is create a label. If I could type label feature. Yeah, and we could put first name. Let's just save and see what happens. Refresh, and we can see here we've got first name and then the input field. Okay, but if I'm going to click on the first name, see, nothing happens. It's just dead. So what we can do is give the input type here an ID, and I'll just call this first name in camel case. So ID first name. So we come back up to the label. If we click 4 equals inverted commas, copy over the ID, and now save and refresh. Okay, so I'm just about to click on the input field. That's fine. Now, if I click on the first name, the input field gets a focus. That's really nice. And please use labels because this is really important for assistive technologies for screen readers and so on. Now, so the form is coming along quite nicely. Of course, we're not using CSS yet, so I'm just going to use a bit of a cheat just to separate these things out. So you might want to type BR in pointy brackets. Okay, these are breaks in HTML. It's a bit old-fashioned now because we should use CSS to do the business for us, which we'll come on to in future videos. Now I'm going to create a label with last name. Now I don't need to change the type because we still want the text, the user's text, and the ID needs to be exactly the same with the 4, ID and 4, because the label points to the input field. I'm going to hit save, I'm going to hit refresh and see what happens. So nicely we've got first name and now last name, and I can click on the last name here and the input happens because of the 4 linking to the ID. Okay, so the company or whoever might want some more information, so let's just put BR just to break it up, and I'm going to copy and paste the input because really the input doesn't change apart from the type. And now I'm going to put in number. I'm going to call this age, and I'm going to create a label, and I'm going to call that age and age. So I wonder what's going to happen here. Let's just come down. I've got a label with a 4 to age, pointing at the ID age, and the input type this time is not text but number. So I'm going to hit save, I'm going to hit refresh on the browser, and now we've got age. Okay, I'm clicking on age and it comes up as a focus again because 4 is pointing to the ID. Now, what we can see on the left-hand side, as described in the slides earlier on, is that there are little buttons up and down where we can change the number. Okay, but of course that's going to take a long time to get to my age because I've got a little grey hair, so I need to use the buttons. So I'm not going to put my proper age in, obviously, so I'm going to go 47. Now, if I sort of type some letters in, see what happens. Okay, nothing at all. So 21 with quite a few years of experience on top. So there you go, that's input type number. Another thing that the companies or whatnot might want. So, for example, here's a good one. You're booking a flight, so they might want to know when you want to fly in terms of date. Okay, so all I'm doing is copying an input over. All I'm doing is changing the type, and I'm going to type date. Let's go. I'm going to call this fly out. All right, so label, copy, and I'm going to call that the 4 equals fly out. What's your departure date? And save, and I'm going to hit save, or let's just make sure, and refresh. And here you go. This, sort of hypothetically, I'm an airline website. So what is your departure date? And the user can click. They can either type, let's go 1112. By the way, this is the British methodology. Whoopsie daisy. 2020. Yeah, something like that. Or indeed, the user can you just click on the button. We haven't coded this. This is HTML working nicely. And I'm going to select Friday the 25th of December, which we all know is Christmas Day. Okay, so that's neat. Just type date and you get the calendar drop down. So what next? Well, perhaps continuing on with our theme of flying, so or booking a flight. So let's provide, now we need somebody or the user to pick sort of, what is it, what seats, yeah, the cheap seats or the expensive seats. Okay, so I'm just going to type in seats. I'm going to give the ID of seats, and bearing in mind the label 4 equals seats, which is exact ID, and then we can give each one of these we need to give it a name. Whoopsie daisy, put it in the wrong bit there. Okay, so I'm going to fill this out a bit. So name equals, this bit will be talking to the website server, and let's go value equals, let's call it economy. Yeah, what I'm going to do, is just bring the text editor out a bit, and then economy. Okay, so I'm going to just copy that line and repeat it twice. Okay, because there's 3 parts to the aeroplane. So we go business and first. In my dreams. In my dreams for business as well. All right. So, first. So, let's see what happens here. Okay, so we've got type radio, because we want this user to choose that one, or that one, no more. We've got an ID of seats. Yeah, so the label with the 4 seats points to this. Got a seat name that talks to the browser, and that talks to the database on the server. So hopefully there's a column on the database called seat choice, and then our 3 options: economy, business, and first. I'm going to hit save. Come over to, in fact, I'll just put a couple of BRs in here so that it breaks it up. Hit save, come over to the browser, and I'm going to hit save, refresh, and look, we've got these radio buttons. So I can either choose economy, which is probably the one, business, and note when I click business, the economy one disappears. But if I'm feeling really rich, which I'm not, I'm going to hit first, and you can see the business one unchecks itself. Okay, so that's really neat. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. However, there's one more little trick. So if we're sort of aiming our market, say at business class, rather than first or economy, what we can do is write in onto the business line, checked equals checked, like so. I'm going to hit save, come to the browser, and refresh. And now, with my checked equals checked, you'll see that the default value of the checked radio is in the business class rather than the economy or first. I'm just going to refresh the page again, and you watch where the radio button jumps to, and it's to business class. Okay, when do you want to depart? I'll go on Boxing Day. I want a business class flight, etc. So you can see where this is going. This is really, really quite exciting stuff. Okay. Let's say we want to give the user multiple choice. Okay. Oops. Command V. So I'm just putting a BR in here. So effectively, it's very similar to what we've already done. So I'm going to just copy that label and the first input, B. Okay, so got the label. Now let's just call this codes. This is nothing to do with flying now. Let's get rid of let's call the ID codes to match the 4. And now I don't want radio, I want checkbox. Okay, so type equals checkbox. Value, I'm going to call that HTML, and you know where I'm going with this. Okay, I'm going to type code choice. Don't forget, name will point to maybe a database on the server with the same name as a column or row or whatnot. So what I'm hoping to do here is create some choices for you. What do you want to learn? Question mark. Oops. Learn question mark. So we've got HTML. Let's go to CSS, which I'll do next, and then value is JavaScript. Right. So that's good for now. I'll just copy over 2 BRs underneath, and I've hit save. So let's see what happens on our browser. Hit save. Here's the question: what do you want to learn? I'll just come out. Well, we want to learn HTML. That's what we're doing right now. But after that, I might want to learn CSS, and maybe then JavaScript. So you can see the difference between radio buttons. Let's look at the seats. So it jumps, it only allows us to do one thing, whereas down here with the checkboxes, we can have one or more selections. Yeah, so that's pretty neat. And all we've done to make that happen is put type checkbox. Now, there is one more thing I want to show you. Now, it wasn't on my slides because it wasn't an input, so to speak. Okay, what we're going to do now is create effectively a select drop-down menu. Okay, so we'll call it, let's call this code option. Okay, and that'll do, code option. And on this one, I do need to put a closing tag. This is select. Okay. Effectively, we're creating a drop-down menu. Okay, so option value equals, I'm just going to do the same values as earlier on, HTML, and close that. And I want a closing tag of option, but in between, we're going to put HTML. Yeah. Command C for copy, paste, type in CSS, JavaScript, and in the values I'll go CSS and JS. Okay, and really that's it. However, we haven't done a label, so I'll copy one from above and V, what is your favorite code? Yes, I know it's a British way of spelling. Hey ho, so I'm going to hit save, go over to the browser and click refresh. And what happens now, rather than checkboxes, we've got this drop-down facility. Yeah, so I can choose CSS or JavaScript, back to HTML. So that's quite neat. However, what we can add, if you so desire, under select, because what we saw then, is I can only choose one. Okay, I can't choose many. So what we can do in the select option, or the select tag, type in multiple equals inverted commas multiple and save. Hang on, something wrong. That's blue, that's red. Well, I've overtyped a thing there. So I'm going to hit refresh, and now our drop-down menu is effectively on the page, and I can, with the command or the control, I can choose one or more. Yeah. So there you go. So that selects. You can either have select just one or quite a few. Okay, nearly there now. I'm going back to catch an input. I'm going to just copy one from up there, just tweak it a bit, and delete all that stuff and call this file. Okay, value, call it upload, and let's give it a label. Copy a label that I can actually reach. B upload your MP4 video. I'll just call that files type ID, because that's what we're looking at, is call that files. Okay, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit refresh, and here you can see upload. Whoops, there's obviously spelled your incorrectly, MP4 video, but I've got a button here that I haven't created. It's just comes with the deal, and it just opens up. You choose your file and then upload. It'd be alright if I could spell a few things. Upload your. Okay, and finally, and absolutely finally, out of all these inputs, what we can do is create a button, and we give it a type of submit. Oops. And let's go. In fact, I'm going to create a button. Yeah, type submit. I'm going to close with a closey button and type in between the tags. Where's the B gone? Submit info. And we don't need those. So type equals submit, and then submit info, close the button, and I'm going to hit refresh now, and here is our button. Whoops, let's go a bit bigger. So we've got our button here, and so on. So the reason why the sort of browser flashed there is that it thinks it's sending some information off, and it just refreshes the page. But you can see bottom right hand corner, you've got the submit button. So wow, that was a long one. We've done quite a bit of coding there. Your first form with, these are text fields. This is a number field. This is a date field. Here are the radio buttons. Here's the checkbox buttons. Here's a select button. Sorry, select list. You've got a button to upload files, and you've got a button to submit stuff. Wow. So we've learned a lot. And let's go back to the slides to see if I've missed anything out from our learning objectives. Okay, the objectives were to recognize form syntax, understand the different input types, and understand the importance of labels. Okay, so form and closing brackets form was all well and good. The input types we looked at and have coded: text, numbers, password, radio, checkbox, file, date, and submit. We've covered a lot there. Don't forget, the radio only gives one option to choose. Checkbox gives us quite a few options to choose. We also looked at the select feature, which you can, it's like a drop down for one thing or drop down for multiple if you code it that way. And finally, understanding the importance of giving each input a label. This enables assisted readers, screen readers and the like to work properly for the users who use those technologies. So, wow, that's it. Thanks for watching. My name's Mike. See you in the next one.